All right, you groovy grasshoppers. Here he is again. I just noticed something. I've been talking to him, but you're wearing a full shirt.
Yeah, full shirt. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know, man. I just
people come from all over the world to watch this show. Just to look at your chest.
Those poor people, man.
So this is Mark Puttenvink, a good friend of mine.
We need to raise that bar a little bit, Tom.
Yeah, tons of respect for him. Patriot Training Systems is his company, trains all kinds of people, men, women, kids, Navy SEALs, everybody. Had been a physical trainer with the New York Rangers for a while, New England Patriots. Mark Puttenvink, how are you doing there, brother?
Doing great. Saw the surgeon Friday, so I'm going to get.
Well, that's right too. We got the. What are they officially calling it? What are they saying it is?
It's an inguinal hernia, which is very common. I think 75% of hernias are inguinal, so it's right next to the goods. And what happens is, I didn't know this, but you have tubes coming up out of your bottom, so to speak, out of your testicles that go inside your abdomen, and one of them tears, and then you get a hernia.
Oh.
So he's going to go in there.
Is that where hernia always is?
No, there's higher ones. You can get a higher hernia above your belly button.
Right.
So it's basically you're lifting too heavy or something. In my case, probably from skating and ripping groins, and you tear that tissue, and then there's a hole, and then something pops out through, and that's where you get. I could feel it.
So
yeah, it's a little.
Just like who pops in this guy here right now. So Larry Melnick, of course, he calls his junk little Johnny.
Yeah, well, so my problem, Larry, is that it's embarrassing because the hernia might be a little bit larger, so it's kind of embarrassing.
So you're too big. So they're going to do a reduction when they're down there too. Like you're just too big.
I've had 3 already, and they just can't get it right.
Just not enough.
No.
So I should have even contacted. I wasn't even thinking. I was at the Fritz Dietl ice rink on Saturday.
Oh man, let me tell you,
that's close to where you live.
10 minutes.
Oh,
yeah.
What a rink that was. So I took a video of it. I probably should have done more detail on the rink itself. So it's just a square box. The rafters, you can reach up with your stick and touch the rafters. Yep. There's no benches or whatever. The doors from the lobby go right out onto the ice and everything. That was classic. Yeah. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah. You go. So when they play men's leagues games there, you got to go off the ice and you can grab a drink while you're waiting or a hamburger and then pop back on. Because the snack, as you saw, the snack bars right there. Yeah. That thing's been there from easily the 60s and 70s.
So Fritz Dietl, I guess, was famous. He skated with Sonia Henning and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And he passed away, and then his wife had it for quite a while. And then she passed, and I think the son Ernie is running the rink now. But as you said, it's 4 corner. It's a box. Yeah. There's no boards. And it's just concrete. It's blocked. It's cinder block.
Yeah. I've never seen a rink like that. I've never seen a rink like that at all. Yeah.
I was giving a kid a prior lesson one time, and I caught an edge, and I just had sweats on. Yeah. And I went into that wall about 120 miles an hour sideways. I thought I broke ribs because it just,
That's funny. Oh. Yeah. It's everything I pulled up there at first. I thought, this is like even the look on the outside of the arena, you think this isn't an ice rink, but they had sign there and everything.
God bless them, but they haven't touched anything since the 70s, I don't think.
I think they said they closed it for a little bit because they had to put a coat of paint on. That's all they
right.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
Many years ago.
We had a thing there. I just think my nose. I was there with the Rangers. They had a learn to play program. Mm-hmm. So it was a free skate. Kids are fantastic too. We divide the ice up. Some of the kids couldn't skate very well, so they were skating around. And the rest of the kids, they're funny bunch of kids. You know what they love to, and I know we've talked about this before. We didn't do any coaching. We just gave them. We threw the sticks in the middle, threw them each way. That's the teams. You go play. Kids had a ball. They were.
Yeah. That's what it's about. It's supposed to be fun.
Totally, yeah. And I got to tell you, I think like I did that as a kid. I was lucky. I played with people like Phil Esposito and Wayne Gretzky. They always talked about that they learned more from the game because they got to make moves, try things out there. They weren't always being coached all the time. So I think it's fantastic for kids to do that. So.
I also think like pond hockey in particular, because you don't have really good surface and a puck's going to bounce and you get really well at receiving a bad pass or something happens, it flips through the air and you get, so it's good.
Remember those days? Oh man, I remember growing up on a farm there where we had a pond. Sometimes I go out in the field, so the field would have a little indentation in the middle. It would get warm, the snow would melt and then freeze again and create the ice. But it had little patches of grass sticking up and everything. So I'm stick handling through the grass and everything, thinking I'm Bobby Orr. It's cool.
We had I lived on a lake, and across the street was the river, and the river would freeze every once in a while, which was fun to skate on. But better yet was further up the river into the swamp. And we go swamp skating, and you're whizzing through the trees like, Harry Potter kind of thing.
Cool.
It was kind of fun.
Definitely. We were talking about our good buddy Bill Brown there that put these swim together, the swim across the Hudson. So how did it ever come out? Do they know how much money they raised from the swim? Is there
I don't know yet. This is to be determined, but I'm sure it's a tremendous amount because it's a huge event. And we had, I think, 150 Patriots swim this year, which is a large number. So all those Patriots, their families and friends are donating. So there's a real pile up of money, which is a good thing.
And again, you can continue to donate money even after the swim. It's gigofund.org, correct? Is that where the money's going?
Correct. Yeah. Donate to the SEAL swim. And Bill doesn't stop. I mean, this weekend he did the run with the full fire department gear on,
Yeah, I saw that too. He had that posted. What's his, is it Freedom Spirit? Is that what his,
yes,
Instagram?
on Instagram. Yeah.
So if you want to follow Bill, he's a fantastic man. Obviously served the country as a Navy SEAL. Great family guy, 2 kids, little daughter was with him there too. Wasn't the redhead little daughter there?
Yeah, and was really interesting because he was educating her about the history of the country. Right. And I think today you're not going to find that in school too much, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, right? So I know you and I both been, you were doing it before, but I've more recently gotten into the whole mental health area. Yeah. Even I tell for kids, like, especially with all this pandemic going on and everything happening, it's a shame we don't do more stuff in school, right? Like teaching the kids about mental health and everything.
Yeah, it really is. And, when you have they're so strictly coordinated with the teachers union and they dictate so it gets politicized like everything else in this country. But the 2 years of masking and like little kids haven't learned how to read faces. They don't know how to speak properly. There's going to be all kinds of speech therapy problems because you need to see a human mouth move to learn how to speak. Yeah. So I think and what's really disappointing, Tom, the CDC is saying, oh yeah, we really screwed up.
Are they saying that now?
Very quietly, but they're saying all just about everything we did was wrong. We kind of knew that all along, because it kept changing. The football kept moving. Masks work, masks don't work. Turns out they don't work unless you're wearing the N95 or something. And even then, but whatever.
What are they saying about closing the schools? Do you think was that a good move to close the schools?
It was a bad move. It was a terrible move.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they weren't transmitting. Again, I don't want to speak out of school because what do I know? But I'll tell you this much. It could have been done in a much better way than it was, for sure. Yeah. You shut down gyms, but you keep liquor stores open.
Right. So I guess the concern too was at the time when it first started was the overload. The hospitals were just getting slammed, right?
2 weeks. They said 2 weeks just to flatten the curve became 2 years.
Yeah.
Because like most things, Tom, they grab power and they're not going to let go of it.
Yeah, I know. You wonder, like even watching New York State here with Cuomo at the time, the mayor, and de Blasio, it's just, they were
awful.
They were just fighting for attention, both of them, right?
Then you got this other unelected woman. I'll leave it at that.
Careful.
Yeah. She's really going like this right now because she put that guy in prison only because it was the New York Post had a big, huge story about it. So she's like, yeah, I made the decision. I called DOC. And the ironic thing was she didn't put the dude back in jail over the attack. She put him in over a parole violation.
So just so everybody knows, on the streets in New York, there was a parole violator who just blindly, just randomly attacked some gentleman, right? There's no provocation or anything. And he should have been in jail all along. Even after he attacked, he didn't kill the gentleman, did he? Put
him in a medically induced coma. Now, I did read this morning they've taken him off the ventilator, which means he's improving. But he had a fractured skull, a brain bleed. He'll never be the same.
So the guy that did it got arrested initially, but then got released, right? Didn't get.
So what happened was he went before the judge, and the prosecutor knocked it down from attempted manslaughter or homicide or whatever to aggravated assault, which for some reason in New York is a misdemeanor. I always thought AA was a felony, but in any event, and they put him back on the street. The guy was on the street in 2 hours.
So then the governor.
And by the way, before I forget. He's a convicted level 3 sex offender. Yeah. We're not talking about some guy having a bad day.
Right. So then the governor stepped in and got him thrown back in jail.
On the parole violation.
Parole violation.
So you're not supposed to get in trouble while you're on parole. Not the original, but she's chest puffing and I'm this and I'm going to stay.
As much as the right decision ultimately was done, I don't think the governor should be stepping in on those individual cases, right? That's why we've got
no. The only time they do is when they're up for re-election.
Yeah,
and their poll numbers don't look great. Everything is done through the lens of politics, and that's how we get to be where we are right now.
Yeah,
and so part of what I do, Tom, is I teach situational awareness, quote unquote survival skills. I don't like the term self-defense because to me that means you're already being attacked. How do you have, other than constantly looking over your shoulders? I mean, that guy literally walked up. The guy was having a conversation like you and I are. He walked up behind me and just sucker punched. And first he put work gloves on. So the guy's nuts, but still.
Well, I got to tell you, like when I go particularly into Times Square in the city now, I'm always aware. Like I don't let like people walking behind me, whatever. I hate to say that. I love New York, but Times Square right now, man, that's.
Yeah, it's the stabbings have gone up 43% this year in New York City. They average about 2,500 stabbings a year in New York City. And, the gun violence is horrific as it stands, but, then knives are everywhere. I mean, they're in the kitchen, everywhere you work. It doesn't take much to grab a knife, put it in your pocket, and go do some damage.
And like this case was just a random thing, too. There's no confrontation. So
nothing. Total strangers. Yeah.
And that's been happening a lot, right? Like it's.
Yeah, because there's no mental health care system in New York City.
Yeah, I know.
And they're just there's an acronym MICA, which stands for mentally ill, chemically addicted, and that's what a lot of these people are. They're mentally ill and they got a drug problem, and they don't belong in prison, but they do belong off the street and getting treatment. Right. And the ones that refuse, then maybe you got to figure a different way, but.
So from a law standpoint, though, if somebody hasn't done something, I guess we really don't have the right to put them in any institution.
So here's for that, no.
Right.
At least I don't think so. I'm not sure. But apparently they're just, I think at one time, I forget the numbers, Tom, there was X amount in mental institutions. And over a period of time, in a short period of time, it's like 10% is left. All the rest are out on the street. And that's what you see in New York. And most of these big cities, like if you go out, Beth and I were in Santa Monica a while back, and there were homeless everywhere on the boardwalk. And they're all, mentally ill, most of them, and it's a terrible problem.
Yeah, the mental health is a real issue. I mean, we've talked about this so many times, man. It's in all aspects, right? You talk about the kids not being in school, how unhealthy that is for them, not socializing, just social media. All that
I think to some extent, everybody, because of going through COVID, listen, I go back to your dad and my dad. Their generation went through depression. They went through World War, went through a lot of stuff. But we still have to be realistic what happened to us. This 2 years of COVID, I think a lot of people are like a low-level depression or a big depression.
We've talked about this. I tell you, I swear, especially driving on the road, it's like people are just saying, screw it, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Yeah. Running red, like I don't go through a green light anymore unless I'm looking both ways because people run red lights all the time.
So, yeah. It's there's a trestle here, Tom, where you stop and you really can't see what's coming either way, because like you're kind of in a cave a little bit, so to speak. When that thing turns green, I wait because inevitably somebody goes whizzing through, man.
Yeah, just basically saying, screw it, I've got someplace to go. I don't care. I'm gonna
get there. Take you out too big. That's your problem.
I know.
You know what? Yep, go ahead, Tom.
No, I'm just rambling right here. I don't. Nothing really.
We watched on Netflix has a great. I don't know if you remember Manti Te'o's story. Manti was a linebacker at Notre Dame.
Yes. The fake girlfriend or something, was that the?
Well, he got catfished.
That's okay.
So it's on Netflix. It's two series. It's about an hour and a half total, 2 hours most. And it's very interesting because at the time everybody made fun of the kid. Yeah. I did too. I was an idiot just like everybody else. In fact, I remember taking a bus into the city for something, and I took a picture of the empty seat next to me. I said, "I'm with Manti's girlfriend." Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's
right. A straight ticket to hell for me. But anyway, so turns out, and when you really follow his story, he's from Hawaii. He's a Polynesian. He's super, super religious. They have the Church of Latter-day Saints down there.
Oh.
And what happened was, all the Polynesian community, they go to SC. They all play at SC. If you look at their lineup, there's a lot of Samoans, right?
Right.
And
Troy Polamalu, was he a?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Junior Seau.
Yeah.
And so what happened was he, being so religious and a God-loving person and all that kind of stuff, I guess he was entering the high school and he saw somebody that had been a mentor to him. And the mentor says, what are you gonna say on commit days? Well, USC, but I got offers from here. I got offers from Notre Dame. So his mentor says to him, listen, you can go to SC and be another Polynesian football player, or you can go to Notre Dame and be Manti Te'o.
Yeah, cool.
Right. So he did. But the funny thing is, they show the video when he committed because it's on ESPN. He really was almost in tears when he's putting a Notre Dame hat on. So he was still really conflicted by it. So this kid goes from Hawaii.
Yep.
I've been to Notre Dame many times. South Bend in the winter is not pleasant weather.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
There's no Polynesian community there, or maybe one other kid on a team. Maybe I think one of his buddies came with him. But anyhow, so he's like really, and Tom, as a professional athlete or collegiate, you don't have any spare time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're supposed to be in school. So these guys have maybe a half-hour a day where they got downtime. So Facebook just started with, and he gets hit up by a friend request from a very attractive Polynesian girl from the West Coast. And at first it started off, he's just saying, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And it built up into this whole thing, right? And I don't want to say too much because if you watch it, you're going to be surprised because the catfish is in the documentary, the person who did this to him.
Oh.
Yeah. And this person was also Polynesian and has numerous family members playing in the NFL or played at USC.
Oh. So
it's a really strange story, but the long and short of it is the kid got screwed over so bad.
So what happened though? So he came out and said he had a girlfriend?
So what happened was they were playing, I want to say it was Michigan State. And that morning he legitimately got a phone call that his grandmom had passed away. Oh. And then this person who was catfishing, because what happened, Manti was saying, hey, we're coming out to the West Coast, probably playing SC. We can finally meet. And the catfish person said, I got to get out of this. I'll tell him I was dead. I'm dead. So what happened was, quote unquote, a family member calls Manti and says she's hurt terribly in a car wreck. And then that particular day called up and said she passed. But it was the same person using a different voice.
Jesus.
So this kid legitimately knew his grandmom died, thought that his quote unquote girlfriend passed. He was an emotional wreck. He went on the field and he made people pay that day. Yeah. I mean, he was he should have been a first round draft pick. Right. But when all the dust settled and this story came out, NFL teams are looking at him like, I don't know if I want to, first round for this guy. He's got a little baggage. It's a little crazy here. So he slipped down to second round, costing him millions of dollars.
Right.
Yeah. So
how did it come out though with the girlfriend? Like, I can't remember what started all that. Did he tell somebody his girlfriend died? Is that what it was?
Well, he told everybody. Told the media. I mean,
right.
it was.
What? Then somebody went and did the research and found out that was just.
So Deadspin, which is how would you describe? Yeah, they kind of like all this kind of rumor stuff, right? Yeah. Somebody did the math. I forget how he did it, but he figured out something's not right here.
Oh.
And he had a computer dude who's like really good with computers and was able to get IP addresses and all this kind of stuff,
right.
And figured it out. And
it came out at the time then that she was catfishing him? Or
he.
Oh.
Yeah. Was a football player.
Really?
But decided to make the transition. So it's a really complicated story. Really complicated. And there's a scene where the girlfriend's name was Lene, which I guess is a Polynesian name,
right.
Does her voice. And if you didn't know, you don't know.
Is that right? Eh? Oh,
yeah, it's a really interesting documentary. But the long and short of it, I feel really bad for him because he got really screwed over. In his NFL career, he had such anxiety, he really couldn't play.
Jeez, that's a sad story because you can see a kid that really came from Hawaii, really didn't know the mean streets kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah. And you know what, Tom? The media in this country. He sat down with Katie Couric, and you know what the first question is? Because there was the thought that he made this story up, and she says, "Are you gay?" First of all, as if that matters. But secondly, it's none of your friggin' business. And shut up.
I know.
I mean, these people are just. But you've dealt with the media. You know what they're like.
Oh God, there was a time way back when Sheldon Kennedy was going through his stuff. So people know I represented Sheldon Kennedy. He had been sexually abused by his junior coach from the time he was 14 years old. This is an open story now. I'm not telling stories behind his back. And he then went to the RCMP up in Canada. Graham James was the coach. Got arrested. And after the whole court case and everything, ESPN came in to interview Sheldon. And I knew the young girl had contacted me. She was very professional. She said, she understood the importance of this and to protect Sheldon and everything. So they brought this. I thought she was going to be doing the interview. They brought this other guy in. I can't remember his name. He was a big guy at ESPN. Sits down. That's the same thing he asked Sheldon. I was in the room and I said, that's enough. Interview's over.
Yeah.
It was just, like I said, first of all, what does it matter? This isn't about gay or not gay. This is about somebody being abused and had the courage to go up and stop. Like Sheldon Kennedy's a hero. We've touched on this before. We've talked about it with Chicago Blackhawks when they had their incident with the one coach there that abused a player. And it became a big story, especially in the hockey world. And not that I want to prolong it in the negativity, but it happens every day. It doesn't go away because it's stopped in the Chicago thing. Doesn't mean this abuse stops around the world. People are being abused, men, women, kids, all the time. Right now,
100%.
It's it's something that ruins lives. Sheldon, he's fought through now. He's a lot better. He does a lot of good work now, going up and speaking about it. But it's like some kids are committing suicide after being abused.
Oh, yeah, no question. And during COVID, I went into a deep dive. If I read a dozen books, I've read 100.
Yeah.
And one of the books, there's two books. One book everyone should read is called The Gift of Fear. It's by Gavin de Becker. And it's a great book explaining how fear is a natural survival skill we have and not to diminish it. Something doesn't seem right, especially now. Like we're talking about the guy getting sucker punched. Yeah. We do have that spidey sense. That's how we got to be when you look at a human being, we're not very tough up against a lion or a dinosaur, but we figured out a way to survive, and we have that sixth sense. In any event, so his book describes how to use that for survival. But he also wrote another book I read, which was about children and predators. And more often than not, the person abusing a child is a family member or a friend.
Yeah.
And the whole grooming process, how they they're very methodical, and they can also, and I don't know about Sheldon's case, but I know another player that you and I both know that was part of that, had a difficult family life. They identify that. They zero in. They're predators. They really are.
Yeah, like you hate to say it like this, but the predators are very intelligent people.
Very intelligent, very good at what they do.
Yeah. And you're right. It's they'll pick kids that don't have family or have
something's going on.
Yeah, like Sheldon's case, he thought that his father would just beat him up. He's a tough old farm boy. He thought that his mother would support him, but she'd be pulling him home and he wouldn't get to pursue his dream of playing the NHL. Yeah. So it was just it's a terrible story. It just happens so much too. And again, one of the hard things that people can't understand is, like in Sheldon's case, he didn't come forward until he was 26 or 27 years old, and he started getting abused when he was 14. There's been lots of cases. I know a police officer up in upstate Connecticut. She, really nice person. She was abused really young, and I think it took her like 20 or 30 years before she came out. So a lot of people can't understand and kind of speculate that they kind of doubt the story because it takes so long for the person to come out with a story. But you never know what's going on in a person's life. You don't know their support system. If a certain amount of time goes on, do they just say, well, forget it, it's in the past, and then later on in life they kind of relapses or whatever, and then they have to talk about it. So we really need, now again, has there been cases where people accuse people of abuse and it never happened? Yes, that happens. There's no question about it. But we really need to support people. If they come forward and say that they've been abused, we really need to support them and make sure that they need to know that there's people there that'll help them through it. So,
like we spoke about last week, it's never a bad question. Hey, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah.
Never a bad question.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from the whole Sheldon case too, because I knew him in Detroit. He was a friend of one of my clients, Dallas Drake, and Sheldon had an agent, another agent. And we would go to lunch together and everything. And Sheldon was this fantastic kid, but he was always getting in trouble, like drugs and alcohol and crashing motorcycles. And then when he finally tells you what's going on, it kind of all makes sense, right? Like if you get the sense, like you said before, that sixth sense that, okay, this shouldn't be happening. Why is this kid doing it? If I look back at things, I would have sat down with him and said, Sheldon, you're all right, but like, why are you doing this?
And that's true. The other player, I don't want to mention his name because he's not really public with this part of his story, but he had cocaine addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, women addiction. And then you find out how he grew up and what happened to him. You go, okay, self-medicating, he's in a bad spot.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talked before about that sixth sense or spidey sense, you called it, I think. Doing the show with Jackie Long, the hypnotist, and Kathleen McIntosh there, she filled in for a few weeks. They talk a lot about the subconscious mind, and like that's basically what you're saying. Now it's really meant to protect you, right? So things have happened in the past that form the way your subconscious mind works. Like if you've been broke up, some girl broke your heart or whatever in the past, if you now get into a new relationship, you wonder why you don't trust this new woman. She's got nothing to do with the situation, but your subconscious mind remembers the relationship in the past. And we can really train our subconscious mind too to strengthen it and get those thoughts out of there. So it's just interesting.
Native Americans believe in two wolves that we all have inside of us. One is a fear wolf, and that the fear wolf operates under catastrophic thoughts, negative self-talk, and just negative belief system.
Right.
Whereas the courage wolf believes in love, affection, positive thought, seeing the good in people, seeing the good in yourself. Right. You know, and I sometimes fall into that fear wolf when I get a little bit too negative about myself.
Oh, do you really?
Well, yeah. I mean, I can be pretty hard on myself with certain things. Yeah. Mostly, I get hard on myself more about how I maybe should be doing more, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
yeah.
And you got to say, hey, man, there's only so much you can do. You
right.
know? And but whatever it is you do it right. Do
I agree.
Give it all. But in any event, yes, that's a pretty interesting way to look at it.
This is about the two wolves. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I do have. I've found now. I know you the same way since I got into all this True Grit Life stuff and helping people. I have people sometimes say to me, Tom, you can't help everybody, and I'm thinking, well,
why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I think if I'm chosen, somebody's choosing me to help them. I almost feel like I've done an obligation. Now, listen, I'm not going to spend money on it or put myself in harm, financial harm or physical harm like that. But somebody asked me to help them. I think I just have found that I feel like I get better myself. I make myself stronger by helping other people, right?
Sure. But you can, and I'm guilty of this. It's called pleasing people, being a people pleaser. So a guy called me a couple of days ago. I coached with him in college. And honestly, Tom, there's very few people I would coach again with. He's one of them. Great guy. We really on the same page coaching. And I find I don't, I'm doing warrior stuff and, don't have the time. And, but I didn't tell him that up front. And when I hung I said, oh, let me take a look at my schedule because I don't want to tell him no. I'm afraid to tell him no. When I should have just said, hey, Greg, the only guy I'll coach with is you, but I just can't do this. So I strung it along, and then I just went, let me call him back and just tell him, Greg.
I know.
I said that.
I do that. I'm the same way. Yeah.
And he was fine with it. He understood. But I was so afraid to tell him the truth that no, there's no way. I mean, the ring's like an hour away.
Somebody calls on you to do something. You feel like they're obviously doing it because they think that I'm good at, like, they're choosing me. Whatever case it is, and say no to it.
You may never get that question again. Or it's just you're afraid to say no because you want to keep everybody happy.
I know. Danny, our brother here, I married 30 years, but early in our dating, I was sure she was going to dump me based on past experiences.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, Danny, that's that fear wolf, catastrophic thinking, which is a cognitive disorder, which is a term used for I'll give you an example. My son lived in California. If he didn't answer the phone, my mind went right to the gutter with a knife in his throat. So that's because I can't control that because he's 3,000 miles away.
Yeah. The control issue is a big thing, right? Especially with your kids or people you love.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's catastrophic thinking, and that's what they call there's a list. I think there's about a dozen different cognitive disorders, like black or white thinking. It's either all or nothing, or catastrophic thinking. And what he described there is a perfect example of that fear wolf feeding him, or he's feeding the fear wolf.
What's the other one too? Somebody was telling me, is it fear or flight or fight or flight?
Well, fight or flight is a natural, you can't control that. So fight or flight is if somebody comes up and swings on you, you instantly go to your parasympathetic nervous system. So what that means is you switch over to fight or flight. I'm either going to engage or I'm going to run. So you get this neurochemical dump in your body of adrenaline, but also your parasympathetic nervous system, which controls your vision, your motor skills and things like that, but it doesn't control other things. So other things shut down. So when you hear about guys wetting themselves, it's not because they're yellow. Well, they may be yellow after they wet themselves.
Yeah.
It's because the parasympathetic nervous system shuts down because it's not important in survival skill to hold that pee in. Does it make sense to you?
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
say that again, parasympathetic?
Yeah. So you have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. And they both control different functions. Like one controls breathing, one controls reaction time. So there's a differential. It switches over to parasympathetic, which is the nervous system you need to, in a fight or flight scenario, it switches over to that. You have no control over it. It happens. And this is why your heart rate goes up. You may get tunnel vision. There's a whole laundry list of things that occur to you physically, physiologically, I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This makes sense because whenever I would get in a fight on the ice, whenever I just snap. I would not know what's going on. A guy could punch me in the face as many times as he wanted to. I just keep going.
Well, and then I used to get to the box after a fight. My legs would be going. I'm going. What am I? Am I am I a coward? No, because you're just you have so much adrenaline in your body because you went into fight or flight.
So how about the real good fighters that fight all the time? They're able to kind of control themselves.
Yeah.
And be more strategic fighters.
It's a great question. In fact, it's one of the things I've been studying and trying to come up with my own conclusion on. But we also do know that, when you're in a situation where someone's going to either stab you or swing on you, you get this reaction in your body. You can't control it. It's how you react to it, and that's the middle part of your brain. So you have to practice one move or two moves that are consistently going to be there for you. It's just like when you're playing hockey. If the puck's on your backhand, you're going to take a backhand shot. You don't think about it. You've practiced it so many times. It's in the middle part of your brain. It doesn't hit your cognitive thinking. You don't think about it. You go right to the middle part of your brain. I've done this a bazillion times. Boom. In my case, it's wide or hits the post. But in any event, yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question or.
Yeah, it was more like why a guy like the real good fighters in the National Hockey League, especially in the past, they were able to control their thoughts and everything, and they'd be strategic. Like, so when I fought most of the time, it was just more grab with the left hand, throw him as many times as right. And then I would get to a point where, okay, now I've not snapped anymore. I kind of lose my effectiveness of being a fighter, right? It was like when I snapped, I was gone.
Right. So there's two different types of fighters. There's the combustible guy, which is like you. Somebody elbows you in the face, you're coming hard on them. Well, let's get there. Then that's their job. Proby's got to fight somebody, and he's done it so many times, it's in the middle part of his brain now.
Yeah.
And he also, I would assume, a lot of the guys do visualization. I mean, they know who they're playing, who's in the lineup the next night. So if you're going into Detroit and you're the tough guy, you got to fight Proby. Maybe you fought him once, or maybe you fought him twice, or maybe you've seen him fight and you know his tendencies maybe, and you kind of visualize. Box breathing, which I don't think they were doing, but that's what's utilized in combat to try and bring your heart rate down.
I remember Darren Langdon was telling me he was fighting Probert one time. And Darren Langdon was a client of mine, played with Rangers, a lot of Ranger fans remember him. Not a real big guy, one of the best fighters I think that's ever played the game, right? Strategic, like really knew what he was doing. He'd wait for the guys to get tired. He's fighting Probert. He'd tell me when he got home, he goes, I let him tire himself out. I was holding on. I could hear him breathing, and his breathing was getting deeper and deeper. And I'm thinking, he's trying to punch you in the head while that's going on too. Like, what are you doing? Like, I would have said to myself, I'm getting out of here. It was hilarious listening to him talk because he was so strategic and he knew what he was doing. And he was
going back to my earlier, what I was going to say in the self-defense business and all the different martial arts, will it work out there? Not all the time. Because it's not choreographed like what you're doing in a dojo. However, if you can distill it down to one or two moves that are going to work out there, sure, it'll absolutely work for you. I'd rather be trained than untrained out on the street, no question.
Yeah.
I think it becomes a part of mindset, just like the fighters in the NHL. All of them hate the job. They don't want to be a player, but they understand this is my job. This is what I have to do if I want to live this lifestyle, and they hate it. Like anything else, they've been enough of them that they get experience and they get really good at it.
And don't you think the training gives you the mental confidence to know that you can handle yourself? So if you do get in a confrontation, you're much more confident. I find
absolutely,
totally. I found myself. That's the one thing when I came to the NHL, Like, I really thought I was the toughest guy on the planet. I mean, Muhammad Ali came up to Northern Michigan one time to put on like a little sparring session or whatever. And I was working, had me working security. I'll never forget when he walked by me. I was thinking, I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to go. We're going right now. Because I really thought I was that tough. I really did. Then you get to the National Hockey League and then you see, you know, Clark Gillies and Bob Nystrom and Ben Wilson and Paul Holmgren. You go around the league, they're all over the place. And you realize, well, okay, I can fight them, but then I got to fight them all the time, right? Like that's the thing with the fighters. It was like a lot of guys like myself could fight, but to do it all the time, like those heavyweight guys did, that was,
yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's the quiet guy in the room, and it's also the we had my partner Joe Greer and I had a fighter out of New York, and he was Albanian, big kid, right? And we go to he was in the semifinals of the Golden Gloves in New York City, and we're fighting, and generally speaking, at least from you know, in amateurs, you don't know who you're going to fight because it's a tournament, and so I see the guy he's fighting. The guy's like 5'8", kind of chunky dude, right? So I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. And it didn't work because this kid, the small guy, could box.
Oh.
He could really, really box. Right. Problem was the other guy was just way too big for him. And that's and he did stop him in the second round, but we had to change gears a little bit. Right. But here's the other thing too. So you probably weigh, I'm going to guess, 50 pounds more than I do. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you and I get into beef in a parking lot, unless I have a force multiplier, you're going to kick the living daylights out of me. I don't care how much boxing I've done, but that's why there's weight classes.
Yeah.
You know, I could hit you with a liver shot. You're going to feel it, maybe not go down. I could hit a guy my size with a liver shot. He's on the floor crying like a little baby. Yeah. So I have to come up with a force equalizer, and that would be to your eye. You know, I don't want to get too technical, so I don't want to. Yeah. But yeah, there are ways to kind of level that playing field.
I was sitting outside watching my YouTube yesterday, and I got watching a whole bunch of Mike Tyson fights. He's a vicious man.
Oh yeah.
I forgot how vicious he was. Wow.
I think the best quote I heard was Rod Gilbert. I think he just was a year yesterday or the day before that he passed.
Yeah.
And he said, somebody once asked him, the hockey fights really? He said, yeah, if there were, I'd been in more of them.
Oh, that's a good line. I like that. Yeah. That is the truth.
There weren't, rather.
Oh God. What's the scariest 3 words or 2 words? Let him go. Yeah. Let him go. Yeah. Serious words in hockey.
Yeah.
You square up with some guy that's a big guy known to be a fighter, and then you hear the referee say, let him go. Oh my God.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Starts.
And then, you know, like even in boxing too, I mean, just sparring, you're running the guys and you hit them with the best shot, and they're just looking at you like, well, what was that? Yeah. You know, some guys can really just take a abuse and a punch. And then there's guys that are just maybe not the most talented, but they're just straight up tough guys. Yeah. I mean, there's some hard people out there. You know, and I tell you what, when it comes to the street, I'd rather have a hard guy than a trained guy with me.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, you're right.
But he's not going to stop.
Yeah, that's true. Because
a trained guy, you know, you fight like you train. You know, the bell goes off, we stop.
Yeah, it's true.
Not out there. Yeah.
I remember, I thought back when I was younger, like I said, I thought it was so tough. It was weird. A buddy of mine was a bouncer at a bar, one of those places with peanut shells on the floor and everything.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what happened. There's like 3 or 4 guys came to the door, and either the place was too packed or they were too drunk or whatever, but he wouldn't let them in. So they wanted to start a little battle. So there's like, I think it was like 4 of them. So he goes outside. I have to go outside with him, obviously. And he's putting the boots to like 2 of them, I think. And I'm cheering him on. And I was going, yeah, that's the way. The guy comes up and kicks me in the face. So, you know, I was like 18 or 19 years old. So I just snap. Drop him to the ground. He starts to get up. And of course, me being Mr. Cocky, he's like, I said, don't get up or I'm going to give it to you again. So he goes to get up and I just smoked him, broke his jaw. So now the police come and so there's no cell phones or anything back then. So they arrest me, have to fill out all the paperwork. I'm released. And I used my parents' address back in Canada as the address to fill out. Now, of course, I don't call my parents to tell them anything's going on. And they finally get stuff and they call me like, what is going on? And imagine being a parent. They have no clue and they get these babies arrested. And the Booster Club took care of the whole bit and everything. But it was just stupid. You know, I think that was probably the last time. It's kind of a code amongst especially NHL players that you don't, if you're a fighter, especially if
you don't hit a guy when he's.
Yeah, you don't do that side. And I think that was the last time I ever got in a fight. But,
Tim Larkin wrote a book, and I would suggest everyone reads this one as well, dealing with this subject. It's called When Violence is the Answer. So he breaks down violence into 2 things: social violence. You and I bump. Hey, what are you looking at? Yeah. You just don't. You walk away from it, And it's very difficult for men. We've spoke about this in the past with our ego to walk away, but you really need to walk away. Then there's asocial violence, is what happened to that dude in the city, where somebody just came up behind and sucker punched him. Yeah. Or you walk into your car and somebody walks up with a blade or a gun and says, give me everything out. So that's when it's asocial violence, then the answer is violence if given the opportunity, if it gets to that point.
Right. By the way, Jason Redman, I finally posted that poster of his. It was on his hospital room door. Yeah. So anybody don't know, Jason Redman is a Navy SEAL. Was badly wounded in Afghanistan, I believe it was. And when he was in the hospital, people were coming in feeling sorry for him. And he and his wife wrote this poster. And again, I watched the documentary on it. That was from the heart. That wasn't planned or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Put the poster. I basically said it. I've got it on my Facebook and Instagram pages. And it basically says, listen, if you're coming into this room, don't be whining and crying. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to be better than I was before. It's a fantastic thing. So I contacted him on Instagram, asked him if he wanted to do a podcast. He got back to me, asked me to email his woman that works for him. So we're in that process to see if we have him on. I hope we get him
when
on.
We get off this, I'll tell you another route we could use.
Oh, okay, perfect, excellent.
He's on, just for everybody. If you want to watch a great podcast, it's Sean Ryan. His podcast is called Vigilance Elite, and he interviews Jason Redman. Redman tells his whole story. It's a couple hours long, so you're gonna have to watch it in pieces, but I suggest anybody that really wants some motivation and really some insight to watch that. It's amazing.
Yeah, you listen to Jason Redman's story. It's unbelievable. The whole process of what he, obviously being a Navy SEAL to start with, he talks about the one I saw. Maybe that's what I saw, because he talked about actually getting wounded and that whole firefight and everything, and then with the stuff he's gone through. So, excellent. All right, brother. See you next week.
Bye, man. Have a good one.